Hey guys, I am Priyanka from GizBot and today we are going to have a word with Rajan Mathews from COI regarding the current status of telecom sector, its tech and about 5G. So stay tuned. Tell us about the current status of telecom sector.
The current status of the telecom sector is not very good, principally because one, we've come down from 13 operators 2 years ago to 4 operators, and three of those.
So 4 operators or 3 operators now?
3 private, 1 public,
okay.
PSU, so that's the 4. All right, and of those 4 operators, 3 of them are in extremely poor financial condition. One has declared that they're making money. So again, from a financial perspective, there's a certain amount of distress financially that's going on in the industry. So what that means is that the amount of investments that needs to be made in new technologies and existing infrastructure, rolling out our 4G networks, getting ready for 5G networks, all of those types of things take a hit because the amount of investment that's necessary is not coming because, first of all, banks are not lending. All of our domestic banks have kind of tapped out, and when we go to the international marketplace, right, they basically say, look, the health of the industry is in poor condition. How do you expect to start lending to you unless we see a robust revenue stream? So this is where the industry is right now.
So government has already started discussing about 5G and you are saying that industry is not ready for the same. So how you are going to cope up with that or not?
So there are 2 facets with 5G. One is the preparatory time period. As you know, any technology requires a lead time to build up to it. And then, of course, when you go into commercial rollout of networks and services. So I think at this particular point in time, we're really in the pre-launch phase where the country is getting ready to ensure that we're not missing the bus in terms of 5G. So what are we doing? We're identifying spectrum bands, right? We're talking about the pricing of spectrum bands. We're talking about the development of IP rights. We're talking about development of manufacturing capability. We're talking about international standards. All of these types of things are necessary. We're talking about test beds as well, so that, for example, our application service developers can be able to test the applications that they're developing in a test environment. They can get certification. So all of this is preparatory information and detail that the government is very actively focusing on. As you know, there was a high-level committee that was set up under Dr. Paul Raj that has worked on many of these, and those recommendations will now go to the cabinet, and once those are put in place, the country will be ready for 5G. We think that from a commercial perspective, we're talking about 2020 to 2022 when we'll begin to start seeing a rollout of 5G applications.
Okay. And so recently Voda and Idea has completed their merger. So do you think that if I can ask, how this is going to impact the sector or affect or help the sector?
So I think what has become increasingly clear is that you really need deep pockets and substantial resources to be able to compete in today's environment. And given the rock bottom prices that are in play in the marketplace, you need folks who can aggregate the types of resources, which is money and investments and all of that. In addition, you need technical know-how, right? And you need to be able to then have efficiencies that come from scale. In India, scale is everything. You know, it's a large market, and so therefore it's high volume, low margin business. So I think what has happened is that operators have seen that they need to come together to gain efficiencies.
Rajan sir, you are mentioning about quality, you are mentioning about network, you are mentioning we are actually gearing up for 5G. What about the 4G? There is so many call drops happening right now, and after that the merger has been announced, people are facing a lot of problem when it comes to their calling and their call drops. How is industry going to cope up with this thing?
First of all, in terms of addressing call drops, you know, when you look at the quality of service norms issued by the TRAI for the last 2 quarters, every major operator is conforming to the call drop issue, right, the quality of service. And by the way, those call drop statistics and service requirements are some of the most stringent in the world.
If I'm not wrong, TRAI has actually penalized some telecom operators currently, right?
So again, Priyanka, what the penalization has focused on is principally in terms of not meeting quality of service for calls to your call center. And one of the reasons that that has happened, especially in this quarter, is there's been a substantial number of shutdowns of internet. And when the internet gets shut down without any prior notice. For example, Rajasthan has about something like 56 instances of shutdowns in the last 2 or 3 months. And when those things happen, our call centers get flooded with calls of people complaining that service has gone down. They don't know that the government has shut down the internet. And obviously we can't deal with the spike of that type of volume, so the quality of service norms has slipped in some of those areas. So again, there are reasons, and of course our operators are focusing on making sure that those are addressed.
What kind of steps they are taking to ensure that?
So first of all, we are working with the government to say, listen, when you have these internet shutdowns, please make sure the customers are notified, that customers become aware of it as to where the real challenges are. Obviously, we are augmenting the resources, IVR capability, customer care people, in terms of bringing them online, in terms of the areas, becoming more efficient in the way we respond to customers. And at the end of the day, the greatest thing that we can do is ensure that we stop the complaints from coming in, right? And that's obviously investments that need to be made in our networks. Every one of our operators, by the way, have said time and time again that substantial amount of money is being invested in the point of the network which is of most importance to the customer, which is our cell towers. We've put up in the last quarter or so over 150,000 BTSs throughout the country, and that's increasing quarter by quarter. So I think our operators are making the type of investments. But remember what has happened, Priyanka. We've gone in the last year or so from the average consumption of a person who consumes a half a gigabit of data to upwards of 9 gigabits. Can you imagine the type of pressure that puts on our network? And it's not evenly distributed. It's obviously aggregated and focused in our urban areas and our metros and all of these areas. So networks then have to be augmented. Now it takes 9 months to a year to put up a cell tower if we get all of the permissions in time. And what do we face? For example, in Delhi, 360 plus towers have been shut down because of altercations with the municipalities over fees and payments and whether they're legal or illegal and all of these types of things. If you look at Bengaluru, fiber is being cut. Look at Goa, you get to our airport and the airport Wi-Fi is shut down because of issues over payment of increased fees. So I'm saying is that there are a lot of issues that we have to deal with, and we are hoping that we can address them as and when they arise.
Rajan sir, RCom has also announced that they are leaving the telecom space right now and they'll be focusing on real estate now, and they're actually blaming he has not taken the name of anybody, but he's saying that Anil Ambani is saying that it's going to be a monopoly. So what all the factors you can say behind this, you can say, decision he's leaving, and why he's not naming, but he's actually targeting one of the operator. So tell us the reason about it.
So Priyanka, it's very clear that with the entry of Jio and the fact that voice is being given away free. Remember, 85% of a company's revenue was coming from voice. And if one fine day you wake up and voice is being given away for free by a competitor, clearly there's going to be pressure financially on your network and on your operations. So I think that has clearly been the common cause factor for just about all operators. When you look specifically at RCom, remember that RCom made a technology choice several years ago in terms of adopting CDMA technology. Obviously, they invested substantial amount of monies in buying spectrum in the 800 band, developing a network for CDMA, obviously investing in handsets and distributor capability. Unfortunately, the CDMA business did not go very well, and they had to shut down the CDMA business. So obviously they've taken a big hit. Obviously they incurred a substantial amount of debt. They moved over to GSMA, but perhaps it was a bit too late. And then, of course, when you had the whammy of the disintermediation that came from Jio, I think the debt burden that was on the company couldn't really be sustained.
But he's saying, sir, that Mukesh Ambani helped him a lot for taking this decision. So
it's like saying, yeah, the body is dead, he's helped him bury it, right? So what I'm saying is that, yeah, he's helped by the resources of the company. So they
and how this thing is going to help Jio after buying RCom, so after buying the telecom space of RCom, how this thing is going to help Jio?
So for example, one of the major assets that has moved over to Jio is the 800 band, which is a very, very attractive band. They already have other parts of 800, so putting together the spectrum that they acquired through Jio, through RCom into Jio, becomes very, very efficient in terms of utilizing that spectrum, and that's very helpful. They've acquired fiber assets, so again, everybody's trying to fiberize, so getting fiber assets from RCom is very helpful. Getting cell towers, again, as you know, more and more cell towers are required to roll out services, so getting cell towers that they can utilize and share is also substantial. So these are some very helpful things and assets that have come over from RCom that very definitely will help Jio. So in that sense, that's been a good synergy for both brothers.
Rajan sir, please tell us about the exact debt on the industry.
So right now we have about 7.6 lakh crore rupees of debt, and most of it is relating to the spectrum. 56,000 crore rupees of that, right? Almost 60-70% of the total debt burden has arisen from the enormous amounts of money that companies bid for acquiring spectrum. So I think that's been the substantial factor in terms of the debt. And of course now, with the fact of having to refinance the debt, you'll find that with the deterioration of the financial condition of both the industry as well as the banking sector, by the way, our domestic banks are in no position to continue to lend to our industry. So you're looking to foreign sources.
So they said no to them?
Well, because they're already tapped out, right? If you go back to our Indian banks, right, they're already saying, look, we're overexposed to your industry already, all right, we've got our own NPA problems as well, so they're going through their own challenges. And in addition to that, when we look at foreign sources are saying, look, we've got to look at your revenue stream and the health of the sovereign health of the country. And when we look at all of those, especially industry specific issues, we don't see a whole lot of positive news coming out, and so that's becoming a challenge in terms of attracting investments.
But government is working on the same, sir. Government is trying to give you some freebies on something. Government is trying. They're coming up with a policy also.
So if you know the freebies that government is doling out, let me know. But I think, to be fair, I think one of the things that the government has very clearly articulated, if you look at the National Digital Communications Policy 2018, there's a very substantial clause which looks pretty innocuous for the reader, but really is substantial, which says that the government...
So do you want some changes in that particular...
But I think our changes have already been included. But I'm saying is that the significant factor that is included in this is the fact that it says very clearly that the government will no longer look at the industry, all right, to be able to maximize revenue. It wants to optimize revenue. That's good bureaucratic language to say, look, we're going to look from a policy perspective to look at reducing some of the levies on the industry, because we'll want to optimize, not maximize. And so therefore, from a policy perspective, we should see that happening. TRAI, by the way, has recommended reduction in license fees, reduction in spectrum usage charges. So we hope that those types of benefits...
They have reduced the price of 700 megahertz also, right?
Yeah, that is correct, but that's a notional reduction. It hasn't really meant that somebody's rushing to acquire 700. We still think that 700 is overpriced.
Okay.
The pricing of the 5G bands, the 32 to 36 gigahertz range, is also, in our opinion, overpriced when you compare it to other...
It's 462 crore, if I'm not per unit. 492
crore per megahertz.
Per megahertz.
When you look at a pan-India pricing, that accounts for about 9,000 for 1 megahertz. And again, when you look at 5G, you're looking at a minimum of 100 megahertz per operator to be efficient. So you can take 9,000 and multiply it by 100. No operator presently would be in a position to acquire that type of bandwidth.
I think Jio is ready for that.
Jio maybe, and God bless them. They, if that's the way they would like to go forward and invest, it obviously will be to the benefit of the consumer. Other operators will have to decide whether they want to wait and acquire spectrum at a later point when the ecosystem is more fully developed. Individual operators will make those choices.
Rajan sir, IMC is also around the corner next month, right? So how many footfalls you are expecting? How many participants you are expecting this year?
So first of all, I think we're very, very excited about the lineup of what is happening at IMC. So for example, when you look at the caliber of speakers that we have, right? You have all of our promoters. So you have Mr. Ambani, be there Mr. Birla coming, Mr. Mittal coming. We have all of our CEOs coming, Mr. Vittal, Mr. Balesh Sharma, all of our, key folks from our CEO group will be there, CXOs, CTOs. Mr. Ajit Pai, by the way, FCC chairman, has confirmed that he's going to be there for 3 days. Mr. Sharma, our own regulator, is going to be there. BIMSTEC countries, who have been invited by the Prime Minister.
How many countries are participating?
So right now we have about 8 to 9. So we have the US, we have UK, we have Sweden, we have Nepal, we have Bhutan, some of our own BIMSTEC countries. So
and how many smartphone companies are planning
to? We expect about 5 or 6 of our smartphone companies to
Indian or the Chinese companies?
Well, depends on how you want to define.
And what kind of footfalls you are expecting this year?
So yeah, we're expecting at least 1 lakh footfall these, because this year we're going to be very focused on also the B2C side, only because of the things that you mentioned, the handset ecosystem and the device ecosystem. But I think this is going to be a great place for people to experience things like artificial intelligence, virtual reality, 5G, all the things that are GizBot stuff that we talk about, but really actually experience this through the exhibitors. So all of the major exhibitors, Ericsson, Nokia, Siemens, not Siemens, so it's already acquired, but Facebook and Google and Qualcomm, all of these companies are going to showcase the emerging technologies and what they're going to see, and it's an opportunity for folks who are going to come to actually touch and feel and see what all of this stuff that they hear. What's a BTS? What's a E-Note B? And what is virtual reality all about? What's the experience? Put on a pair of glasses and see what it's about. So I think that experiential factor, and then you combine this with folks who really know what they're talking about. These are people who are talking about the frontiers of technology, who are going to tell you what it is, both in terms of the technology as well as the operational aspect. So you'll be hearing a lot of very world-class speakers and participants, and then of course you have, as I said, the B2C people like Samsung and Oppo, and these types of level companies are looking to come and showcase their products and services as well. So it's going to be a great event, 2.5 days, 3 days. It's going to highlight 5G as well. You'll see a lot of the stuff that we talked about in 5G, things like what is MIMO, multiple in, multiple out. How does that look like in an antenna? And so come and experience, hand, touch, feel, kick the tires, if you will. We're going to have things like automated vehicles. So this is again the new frontier of what one can expect in terms of traffic management. So we'll begin to start seeing some of those innovations as well.